Welcome to Birdseeds. So today's podcast, we're going to talk about a concept I've had for a long time, and that it's, using real estate, obviously my background here, and the different types of foundations that you have for houses. One of the things I pride myself on in my real estate business is my knowledge of construction and houses and how they're built and how they function, how they operate, etc. So if we're going to use that as an analogy, right? So you've got, let's just use three main types of foundations. There's really four, but the slab doesn't really work in this analogy, so we're going to ignore it. So the first one would be a stone rubble foundation. Old houses built in the 1800s, early 1900s. Most of the foundations for those houses were literally field stones stacked up with mortar in between. And they're really solid foundations. That's why a lot of those houses are still existing. The downside, they're not great at water penetration. The water kind of gets through because it's using grout or mortar to, put everything together. And so those houses were never really built with the intention of finishing those basements, and that's the downside of that. But those work really well because if you think about the weight difference and transfer and how it's carrying the load above it, it's not all in one seam. It's kind of spread out all in different angles, and that's why they're really strong foundations. Then we move to block foundations, cinder block foundations. So pre-formed CMU block that were stacked, staggered, and again with mortar joints. The downside, they are pretty stable, but the downside is, you do have linear joints and all in the same line. So they stagger the tops, but the linear joints are all in the same line, so they can be susceptible to bowing and hydraulic pressure issues and things like that. Also, CMU block itself is actually porous, so not the best at waterproofing as well. And what most modern houses are built with in today's day and age is a poured concrete foundation, where they set up a frame, they set up a form, and they literally pour concrete into that form. You'll see it kind of looks like bricks, but that's just in the form. The beauty of that is it itself is waterproof. Water does not penetrate. It is not absorbing into that foundation. But you're not really staggering so much where the load is, so they can crack. And when they crack, obviously water gets in. Now, we've talked about these different sort of three different foundations for houses, and that's awesome, right? What am I talking about? Like, how does that relate to motivation or business? Well, where it relates to it is you can't build a skyscraper on a bad foundation, right? You gotta make the foundation work for what you're building. You're not going to build a skyscraper on a rubble foundation. It's just not going to work. Too many water issues, et cetera, et cetera. You've got to, if you're going to build a skyscraper, you've got to have the best foundation ever. Modern construction, they're going to use steel and so forth. And if you try to build a skyscraper on the wrong foundation, it's going to crumble. It's going to fail. And what does that mean? Well, one of the things I'm doing in my business right now is I'm going back and I'm actually redoing my foundation. It's the most expensive, time-consuming thing you can do. On a house and a business, doesn't matter. If you started off and you don't have the right foundation and you have to go back to it when you've already built on top of it, it's intrusive, it's expensive, it's time-consuming, it's hard, all those things. I'm doing that right now. Not that I had a bad foundation, but it's not the foundation that I've grown to need, grow to want, etc. And if I'm going to continue to develop and grow and to hit the aspirations that I have, I need to make sure that my foundation is solid. I'm not patching it. I'm not going in and just putting a Band-Aid on it or, putting some, paint on it to cover it up or whatever, dry lock paint that kind of seals. It does help with water penetration. Nope. I'm going in and I'm rebuilding that foundation from the ground up, because if I'm going to hit the goals that I have and do the things that I know I can do, I better have that foundation. Otherwise, it's not going to work and it's going to crumble down. So I'm excited to bring you along for that journey. It's hard work. It's expensive. It's not fun. It's hard. It's difficult. But it's so worth it. When I get this thing built, it's going to be amazing. And I can build it as tall and as big as I want because it will be sitting on a solid foundation. Thanks for listening. This has been Birdseeds. I'll fill you in on some details. Take care.